What if? That is the big question for a series when it has gone on for 30 plus years. You all know Power Rangers at this point. I talk about it a lot on this channel. A color-coded team of superheroes fighting off a legion of monsters and saving the Earth from destruction. We all know the initial series Mighty Morphing Power Rangers, but over the course of its history there have been many what-ifs that almost happened in Power Rangers, such as the show coming out much earlier than the 90s or canceled plans for seasons before their creation. So that's what I want to talk about today, the big what-ifs of Power Rangers. With all that said, my name is Rocko from Remlore, and let's dive in. By the way, if you're new here, make sure to like and subscribe. We upload videos just like this one on our Remlore channel. We upload a great new video every Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday at 3 p.m, so make sure you're subscribed with that bell press to get notified when we upload. We're trying to hit our goal of 1,000 subscribers, so if you subscribe, it would mean a lot to us. For our first what if, we need to go back to the 80s where Saban first saw a Super Sentai series, the one and only Bioman. Our story starts as Saban took a trip to Japan in the 80s. He was in charge of a sound production company and took a stay in a hotel room. There, he saw an episode of Super Sentai Bioman on his television and became fascinated with the show, deciding then and there he wanted to bring it to the US. He saw color-coded superheroes fighting monsters using weapons and giant robots to fend off an alien invasion and realized there was potential here. His vision was to take the action scenes and replace the Japanese actors with American actors and dub over the action scenes. Essentially, splice the show with original footage. Standard Power Rangers. Once Haim returned to the US, he got a bunch of actors and filmed a pilot episode spliced with the Bioman footage and called it Bioman. Later changed to Galaxy Rangers, later changed to Dino Rangers, later changed to Mighty Morphing Power Rangers. Because of the Ninja Turtles, they were very popular, so they ripped off the name. Once the pilot was done, Saban went around and pitched the show idea to many different TV networks. However, many networks turned down the idea for various reasons, which included not seeing any value in the show. But Saban had a breakthrough when he spoke to Margaret Loesch, who was the head of Fox Kids at the time. She had noticed the similarity of the pitch Saban had submitted to one Stan Lee submitted years ago and decided to greenlight the show for Fox. Taking a detour from Bioman, let's go back even further to the 70s. If you didn't know, Saban wasn't the first person to try and bring Super Sentai to the US. Marvel legend Stan Lee in the 70s tried to bring the Super Sentai son Vulcan to America. Marvel and Stan Lee already had a deal with Toei, the company that produced Super Sentai, when they made the Spider-Man show and helped produce several Sentai shows. A great story from the Japanese Spider-Man documentary is when a creator for the Japanese Spider-Man showed off the first episode to the bigwigs at Marvel, and they all laughed at his hard work. They thought the show was dumb because of the rubber suit monsters, but Stan Lee stood up and said that it was great and he wanted to greenlight it because kids would love it. This is why Stan Lee was smarter than 90% of the creative minds back then. He could see the potential with a superhero show with live action fighting done on the cheap. Colorful heroes fighting villains every week in live action with weapons and robots is something that was unheard of. So in the 70s, Stan Lee bought the rights to Son Vulcan. It was the 5th Super Sentai, and this was pretty normal for Marvel at the time. They would buy the rights to toy lines and make comics about them, like Rom the Space Knight and Transformers. Stan tried to pitch the show to many TV network executives while also talking about it with Margaret Loesch, who was the CEO of Marvel Productions at the time. His plan was similar to Haim, replace the Japanese actors with American actors and use the stock footage, but for the pitch he created a 3-minute clip of Son Vulcan with dubbed voices. Sadly, the reception to the pitch was poor, meaning without a TV deal, Stan Lee couldn't adapt the show. He went out of his way to dub American performances over Son Vulcan to show it could work, but it was in vain. No one but him saw how great the show could be. Even more unfortunate, the tapes of the pitch dubbed episode of Son Vulcan has been lost to time. But can you imagine if Power Rangers started in the 70s owned by Marvel? We'd see versions of the Power Rangers team up with the Avengers to fight Thanos during the Infinity War movie. Another fun fact for you, I'm not 100% sure on this, I think Marvel still owns the rights to adapt Son Vulcan. So do something with it, Marvel, if that's true. Despite Stan Lee's failure, Super Sentai had seen the light of day in America. Before Saban made his pitch, in the 80s there was a dubbed parody of Super Sentai Dynaman, the 7th entry in the series. The parody was 8 episodes and shown in the United States on the USA Network's Night Flight, and later Nickelodeon's Special Delivery. It was made by John Grier and McDonald of Dollar Productions and their only film credit. To this day, I don't know why this exists, but it is the first showing of Super Sentai footage in America. Don't get it twisted though, this is not Power Rangers. It doesn't have any original American footage and it's not its own story. It's just a dub of the Sentai. None of the structure or charm that made Power Rangers. Stan Lee at least wanted to bring in the American actors and tell a new story. This was just a flimsy edit of the Dynaman episodes with rock music or popular songs from the 80s. Now let me tell you now that I've seen the Dynaman dub, the very first instance of Super Sentai being shown in America It is one of the worst things I have ever watched in my entire life. I cannot even describe to you how bad this is. But even so, I implore you to go see it for yourself on YouTube. If you enjoy So Bad It's Good stuff, you will love this. I was dying of laughter the whole time because of all the wacky cuts, awful dubbing, and some of the worst jokes I've ever heard. I am shocked this exists and existed in the 80s. Like, if this released during the anime abridging era of YouTube during the 2000s, I would have understood. But on national television in the 80s, that's insane. Even more surprising, out of all the Night Flight shows, this one was the highest rated and most requested. And in some instances, when they're fighting monsters with explosions backed by popular songs from the 80s, you can see the Power Rangers charm seep through. Back to the Bioman story, although the idea was given the green light, the Bioman pilot was ultimately scrapped and unaired in favor of Mighty Morphing Power Rangers. They adapted a more recent Sentai as Jodu Senshi Bioman was considered outdated with the old film. This led Saban and Loesch to adapt the more recent Super Sentai Zyuranger, which you all know as the Mighty Morphing Power Rangers. Another reason was because the actors needed to be recast. The American Bioman actors were participating in the United Actors Guild dispute at the time, and Power Rangers was a non-union production. If you weren't aware, Power Rangers has always flip-flopped on it being a union production. It's a little dicey, but this is what I got. When they made the first season, they were non-union, but halfway through the second season, they became union because they were filming a movie. They stayed union until Disney bought the property, and it was non-union again until 2023. It's currently unknown until the new series debuts whether that has changed or not. This is what we know about the story of the original version of Power Rangers when it was called Bioman. An intergalactic threat descended to Earth to wreak havoc, but a team of heroes with attitude were ready to stop them. Sound familiar? They were the Biorhythms, who defended the world against Zadar, an evil half-human, half-robot who wants to conquer the world. Biorhythm Red was Victor Lee, an expert martial artist. He was played by Mark Dacascos, who has had a great career in film and television, being a natural martial artist at a young age. He even played Zero, the main antagonist of John Wick 3. He actually did do some Power Rangers related material because he played the Advent Master in Kamen Rider Dragon Knight at the tail end of its run. Biorhythm Green was Zach Taylor, a detective with a strange style. He was played by amazing character actor Miguel A. Nunez Jr. He has a ton of acting credits and is a phenomenal comedian. What I know him from is playing Demon in Friday the 13th Part 5, one of my favorite supporting characters from those movies. Biorhythm Blue was Billy Cranston, an athletic heartthrob with a body of steel. He was played by Tom Solardi, who is a comedic actor, although I think he may have retired from acting because he hasn't been in anything in the past 15 years. Biorhythm Yellow was Trini Crystal, an intelligent, struggling novelist. She was played by Trisha Leigh Fisher, who is an actress and singer with a ton of credits, and she is Carrie Fisher's half-sister, fun fact. Biorhythm Pink was Kimberly Hart, a sometimes clumsy, clever aerobics instructor. She was played by Rebecca Ann Staples de Nicola, who was an actress, but sadly she did pass away in 2022. The teenagers' names were reused in Power Rangers except Victor Lee, who was changed into Jason Lee Scott. If you notice, they aren't teenagers with attitude, they're young adults with jobs and responsibilities, which would have been cool to explore at an early stage of Power Rangers. We wouldn't get proper adults as Power Rangers until Lost Galaxy, the 7th season. In Bioman, there would have been a character named Bioman, who would have given the team their powers. This character is assumed to be the prototype Zordon. Alpha 5 did not have an actor, but he did look very different in the original series. Because in the Sentai there was a gold robot helper named Peebo, but when they updated to Zyuranger they made a different costume and kept the character. Zadar the villain, who never got an actor, was going to fill the same role as Rita, stock footage antagonist from the Japanese show. Nothing else is really known about him. The specific plot for the first episode is unknown, but my guess is it would have played out very similar to the first episode of Power Rangers. Bioman would have given Ranger powers to the 5 just like Zordon did in the show. There was a scene in the pilot where the teens are in a desert and are suddenly attacked by fighters sent by Zadar. Unfortunately, the original pitch episode was lost to time, but 2 pilot trailers Saban used to pitch were not. On August 2nd, 2016, Miguel confirmed there was a copy of the pilot buried in the storage unit, and Paul Schreier, who played Bulk, said that he had seen the pilot, but he doesn't have a copy. However, he did say that it's likely in the Saban archives where it was discovered. Sadly, the official pilot tape found was the version using the Zyuranger footage, not Bioman. So it's the Bioman actors backed by Mighty Morphing Power Rangers. The one with Bioman may be lost to time. I will say that the trailers are really good. They have the Power Rangers charm that Mighty Morphing had. The American footage with charming amateur actors and a great rock soundtrack backing the footage. I wish it was Bioman footage, but there are fan edits online. I highly recommend you check them out if you're interested. The only official Bioman material we've seen in Power Rangers is one of the many never before seen Power Ranger transformations in Super Mega Force. One of the Rangers used the suit, but they didn't have any plans to do anything with Bioman Bioman, like expand the lore or tell us about the team. They were lazy and wanted more fight scene footage from the Sentai so they could fill up the runtime, nothing more. Now that Bioman is unveiled by the fans, one question remains. Are Hasbro going to do something with this concept? I don't think so, but they really should. Think about this, the precursor to Mighty Morphin. You could do so many things with the Bioman concept. Since it was never developed, it's a blank creative slate for you to work on. No limitations and no fan backlash if you change something. In an interview, Mark Dacascos confirmed that he'd be open to returning to Power Rangers, so bring him back, Hasbro, in any capacity. He's a cool guy. What I'd really like to see is these actors play the Bioman characters. Like they were Power Rangers Bioman, but they worked in secret and come back to guide a new team. You can even use the Bioman footage, but make it a mini-series with a VHS overlay to make it look like a lost piece of media. Or what I really want that is doable, Boom Studios doing a short mini-series about these guys. Like a 6 or 8 issue comic all about the team to really flesh them out. They can do this because they've done it before. Showcasing Sentai Ranger teams like Flashman or Die Ranger or 5-Man and giving them a bit of backstory. The same could be done for Dynaman or Sun Vulcan. Bring Stan Lee's vision to life and give these Rangers a cool story. So if anyone at Boom is watching, please make it happen. We're not done with pitches, however, because they made another pitch episode that was accepted, and it's one we can watch. There was a test pilot made to pitch Mighty Morphing to Fox, and it is quite different from the first episode of Mighty Morphing. This happens a lot with television. They shoot a pilot episode, and if the show gets picked up, they reshoot the thing. And this pilot was shown on a special to promote Lost Galaxy called Power Rangers: The Lost Episode. It was shown by Austin St. John and Walter Jones, who were presenting a lot of information about the series for kids to learn about. The pilot featured the same actors for our Rangers except Trini, who was played by Aubrey Dubois. She was the first pick for Trini, but after the show got picked up, she was replaced by Toei Trang. The reason for this was because Aubrey was living in Arizona at the time, so she asked for more money so she can film in Los Angeles, but they couldn't work out a new deal and she left. This pilot has some differences from the first episode of the show. The biggest being no Juice Bar or Ernie. Instead, our heroes are hanging out at a bowling alley doing 90s teen stuff. Some biker wannabe bully tries to force Kimberly to kiss him, which leads to the Rangers punching him and his goons out. One of them was Paul Schreier, who would play Bulk in the show. No Skull either. After the pilot, it was decided to keep Bulk as a comedic bully and give him a sidekick. So they plucked someone from the rejected Billy auditions and pulled out Jason Narvi to play Skull, and the rest is history. From there, they see a news broadcast of the moon landing and discovery of Rita's dumpster. The astronauts releasing her like in the show. Rita and Babu have the same voices, but Squat, Vinster, and Goldar are voiced by different people. We also see the command center looks different with an 80s style neon look to it. Alpha and Zordon also look different. Alpha has a different suit, and Zordon somehow looks even worse and is called Zoltar. And yes, Zoltar still says get me teenagers, but instead of saying 5 over-emotional, overbearing humans, he says get me 5 dangerous, ruthless, underhanded, overbearing, self-absorbed, and over-emotional teenagers. That's awesome and a much better description of teenagers. Zach also name drops the Ninja Turtles, so they didn't even try to hide what they were ripping off. And when they're teleported to the command center, they morph into their dinosaurs for a second, and the effect looks really creepy. Everything else plays out like the first episode. The Rangers learn about Rita and are chosen as Rangers, but they don't want any part of this. When they leave, the putties attack, they morph to fight Goldar. Sorry, here they call him Fly Guy? Okay, that is the laziest monster name I have ever heard. It's like they gave David Fielding the script for Zoltar but didn't come up with a name for Goldar, so he had to say something on the spot. And they bungle the footage because they use footage of the Sphinx monster when they make him grow and say it's Goldar or Fly Guy. They win and Zoltar congratulates them with Kimberly telling her hair in the helmet joke before doing the iconic high-five freeze frame. It's pretty cool they showed this pilot on TV, and for what it's worth, Audrey was a pretty good Trini. As for the other stuff, the changes they made absolutely made sense and made the episode better. Although I will admit, a bowling alley is a lot cooler than a juice bar. There are minor what-ifs in the development of Power Rangers as well. The movies are a big series of what-ifs. According to the creators, if the Turbo movie had done well, they were going to continue making Power Rangers movies based on the seasons they were developing. And that's such a bummer, because we could have had a movie dedicated to the Power Rangers in space. Put your hands up if you would have loved a Power Rangers in space movie. My hand is staying up. Just look at the Power Rangers Unworthy fan film for In Space and you'll see what I'm talking about. As for shows, there was a plan in the 7th season of Power Rangers Lost Galaxy to give the Phantom Ranger an origin story. Since Phantom Ranger's debut in Turbo, his backstory had been a mystery and they were finally going to answer it to wrap up the last loose end from the Zordon era of Power Rangers. However, that was scrapped because the writer's room was so chaotic during the first couple episodes of Lost Galaxy with scripts being finished as they were shooting. So all those plans fell through. In Power Rangers Dino Charge, there were plans to bring in the Dark Ranger. You remember in fighting Cosmic Fury, Heckle transformed into the Dark Ranger, and it was a great moment. That Ranger was going to be in Dino Charge's Doomwing's transformation to face Xenowing and his Silver Ranger transformation, but it was scrapped for unknown reasons, probably copyright since the Dark Ranger was from a Sentai movie. Speaking of Cosmic Fury, originally it was going to be a straight-up adaptation of Q-Ranger. Suits, Zords, bad guys, everything. The Rangers would lose their powers and get brand new suits, but this was changed for a very simple reason. The Q-Ranger suits did look very cool, but there were a lot of sharp edges on them, and the creators wanted to protect the stunt performers. Not even kidding, if you look at the suits, you see a lot of sharp edges, like on the Yellow Ranger, there's a pointed nostril that's very sharp and dangerous. So it was decided to make new suits and just adapt the Zords, which all worked out great. Back to the movies, there were plans to do more Power Rangers movies after the 2017 movie. In fact, they had planned to make 6 more movies adapting the major stories of the original run of Power Rangers. We don't know the plan of those later movies, but we do know that the sequel would have featured the Green Ranger and Lord Zed. This didn't happen, however, and it wasn't because the movie wasn't a success. There were problems with the film, sure, but box office-wise and toy-wise, the movie did amazing. The reason more movies weren't made was because Saban sold Power Rangers to Hasbro, and Hasbro weren't interested in continuing the 2017 movie plan. And that is a bummer. I really liked the 2017 movie for what it is, and I would have loved to see the series continue. The last thing I want to talk about today is the most famous what-if regarding one Power Ranger season known as Ninja Storm. Good time to mention, by the way, some people were upset that I gave Ninja Storm a C in my Every Power Rangers Ranked video. As I've said in that video, they are just my opinions. If you like a series I didn't like, that's okay. And I never said I hated Ninja Storm. I have nothing but fond memories of watching it, and I really like the season. I'd happily rewatch it any day. It's just I had to be honest with myself. The villain was not good, and the stock music and the depressing, gray, filtered 2000s way of shooting brought it down in the rankings. I still think it was a fun season, however, but it almost looked very different. Coming off of the Forever Red special, which featured almost every Red Ranger returning, sparked ideas in the writer's room for the next season, which was dubbed Power Rangers Hexagon. It's Ahmed Bamek's original plan for the 11th season of Power Rangers. The plan for Hexagon was to have an organized umbrella uniting various Ranger teams. It would have been based on the US Pentagon, except with 6 sides to represent the 6 members traditionally on a Ranger team. This time the location would be known to the public, a base staffed by thousands of people and far too defended for any villain to attack. The dynamic of the villains attacking the Rangers and their planet would be flipped. This time the heroes would go after the villains with their superior resources and numbers. The Hexagon would be led by Tommy, who would be the mentor of the season like Zordon. Tommy kept in touch with various Ranger teams over the years, and this would be a Nick Fury-style Tommy. The idea of Tommy being a mentor could have been reused in Dino Thunder, by the way. The main team would be the 3 Ninja Storm Rangers, young recruits to the Hexagon who worked with veteran Rangers. Sounds a lot like the premise of Power Rangers SPD. Maybe it was reused for that season. These new recruits would have ninja-based powers derived from Ninjor, the guy who made the original power coins from Mighty Morphing. Ninjor being one of the many returning characters in this season. Tommy would send this new team on away missions in response to villain attacks. Each episode would take place at different locations in Power Rangers. Different cities and planets various Ranger teams operated at, where the new team would meet returning cast. The fact most of them looked like LA would also help with the filming. They would be flown there by Joel, the Lightspeed Green Ranger, who would be a main cast member. Something also to note, the main villain would be the Ninja Red Ranger's father. The Red Ranger was raised good but destined to become evil, a reverse of Astronema, a villain from Power Rangers in Space. And Mara, a villain from Ninja Storm, would have been his betrothed. The villains would also be a united force of returning bad guys, ones from the past 10 seasons that didn't have a conclusion. Prince Gasket, Archerina, Scorpina, and Lokar were among the cast. The villains from the Sentai would have been the monsters joining said villain factions. The Thunder Rangers were to be a group of rogue Rangers operating outside the Hexagon network of Ranger teams. They would have been rebellious with an anti-authoritarian attitude. They rejected the Hexagon and the idea of all Rangers working under the leadership of one person, advocating Rangers should be independent and work on their own. And they would be mentored by Jason, who was also against the Hexagon. Jason's role as mentor for the Thunder Rangers would have been more as a father figure opposed to Tommy being a commander. There were also plans to bring in another female character to join the Thunder Rangers to even out the teams. A US exclusive Dark Yellow Ranger like the Titanium Ranger from Lightspeed. The rivalry between the Ranger teams would have been the conflict of the show, years before Marvel did it with Civil War. They would join forces then and again to deal with a bigger threat, but never a single Ranger team. Rangers from previous teams would end up choosing a side. For example, the Equation Rangers would reject the Hexagon and refuse to help them. Don't get this wrong, the focus would still be on the main ninja team, but other Rangers would be sprinkled throughout. The Green Samurai Ranger would have been added later in the series as the most powerful Ranger, and in the end would be the final challenge the Rangers had to fight against by uniting. Since it looked so similar to the original Green Ranger with the gold chestplate, this would be Tommy going into battle. He would help his team and even get into a fight with Jason. Although Although in other notes found, the Green Samurai Ranger would be played by a different character named Derek and work as a deep cover agent. He would alter his costume based on which team he helped because he had two modes, kind of like X from Lupin Ranger vs. Pat Ranger. These were probably two ideas left on the notes before the pitch was scrapped, but I like the Tommy one better. Nothing about that was confirmed, but what is confirmed is that Tommy would become the main antagonist of the series. Over the course of the series, the main team would rebel against the Hexagon when things went too far. The Rangers would fight to make sure Tommy saw the error of his ways and that the Hexagon made openings for people to misuse the morphing grid power, which would ultimately lead to the Hexagon being disbanded, scattering the Ranger teams. This would act as the end of an era for Power Rangers, eliminating all unresolved issues to allow the next season to do what it wanted. They wanted to wrap stuff up: how the Rangers got their powers back, another attempt to reveal the Phantom Ranger's identity, how Terra Venture got interstellar technology while the rest of the world still had normal tech, integrating the Silver Guardians into the Hexagon, a Wild Force team-up, and the remaining villains of that show turned good returning, which could explain why Zanaku was just hanging around at the end of Wild Force. All of that sounds awesome, right? Like the coolest season ever. So why did it not happen? Simple. Saban sold Power Rangers off to Disney. With Disney as the production parent now, they were hopeful the Big Mouse would let them keep producing Power Rangers, but the big wigs at Disney weren't into the show. They thought it was too violent, and they just wanted to do reruns of Power Rangers to save money. They didn't even want the series, it just came with other shows they bought. As a reminder, this is the same company who produced Deadpool and Wolverine, an incredibly violent movie. Times change, don't they? Before they canceled the show, however, a producer suggested that they could save money to continue the show by filming in New Zealand. Disney agreed to that, and the rest is history. That also meant the Hexagon pitch was dead. Since they moved out of the country, that would mean guest stars would have to fly to New Zealand, and overseas flights were not cheap. Ninja Storm was made in its place, and it was good for what it was. But Power Rangers Hexagon would have been awesome. I mean it when I say they could do this now and it would work. Especially since production has moved back to America and there are many more Ranger teams, so your options aren't limited. Obviously they can't do it with Jason and Tommy now, but why not pick other Rangers like Wes and Eric from Time Force? They had a big rivalry in their season, and it could easily be reignited with a disagreement about how to protect the world. We've never really had feuding Ranger teams before on the show, and this would be awesome to get in the modern day with no limitations. The closest thing we've gotten was in the Sentai, where Lupin Ranger and Powder Ranger were in the same show and constantly fought each other. I would love something like that for Power Rangers. I hope you all enjoyed learning about the what-ifs of Power Rangers. Thank you all so much for watching. If you enjoyed, make sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you all later.